Well, finally, Paranormal Activity, at least in its original run, came to an end with the Ghost Dimension. Um, there really is no ghost dimension other than the fact that, that this evil spirit resides in a spiritual dimension on par with reality, I guess, what have you. But the fourth dimension, once again, plays a part here as it was introduced in the marked ones, which between the two, the marked ones is a much better film. This one tries to fix a few things, and it does get back to the house burning down and all that stuff. And it's just, well, that was off camera, and the girls remember that, but they don't remember all the other stuff because they kept being brainwashed into forgetting that they were a member of this demonic cult and all that sort of thing. So this one introduces yet another family, but they've bought this house, which would later be revealed to have been built on the property of the house that Katie and Christy had grown up in. I think that's how I followed it. And but the upshot of it with this one was, oh, you'll get to see the entity. Well, it's just a bunch of globule stuff floating around, kind of like the Venom symbiont or what have you. And the way you're able to see it is this magic camera that they find in a box of stuff, and there's old VHS tapes of, once again, Christy and Katie being brainwashed by the cult and some mysterious man that's there that appears to be in charge or what have you, and all that stuff. And this one does link you to the previous ones, especially the third one, where it details what happened there, and so on and so forth. So it tosses things in, but doesn't really come together, and the performances weren't quite on par with previous versions. At least I don't think so. And it tries to clutter it up with the silly brother involved in this story. It was off track, and it pretty much fizzled at this point. But so there's yet another, a little girl that all of a sudden you need the little girl. She has to be sacrificed. They've already sacrificed a teenage girl from Paranormal Activity 4. That was supposed to be the final rite to get Hunter involved. Where's Hunter? Well, we don't ever see him. I guess we see his adult leg at the end, where Toby has taken him over completely and is now in the physical world and that sort of thing. There's a lot of cool effects and whatnot, especially the portal, which takes them back to 1992, where young Katie and Christy are. And the new young girl goes there, and her mother tries to save her but is unsuccessful and is killed by Toby in the past. And the time travel aspect they tossed around, especially when there was that you do see images of Hunter, but he's in a era in the past where that can't be, but that's just tossed around in there for the purposes of saying, oh yeah, remember, there's time travel, which they put in a movie they went out of their way to say was a spinoff, when in reality, no, it's pretty significant. Especially in the setup for this one. If you notice, the time travel door in marked ones has the weird markings on the side. Well, those markings are all on the side around where the portal appears and all that stuff. As for the camera and its magical properties, you have to conclude that the Coven somehow created this thing and then left it behind. And somebody somewhere must have manipulated the sale of the house to this particular family, because this particular girl is who they needed to finalize whatever ritual they're going through. I mean, man, a lot of other stories about conjuring demons, they just do it, It doesn't take several decades and time travel to achieve and all that. But other than, the effects that were interesting, and at least some attempt to put all the threads together, at the same time adding on more stuff, which in a lot of ways does contradict what they'd already established. There was an alternate ending where it had a happy ending, I suppose, where they saved the girl, the family escapes, and Toby was banished, and they succeeded. And there's this scene where they try to trap the demon. They almost do. They have a priest there, but he gets killed, and then everybody just starts dropping like flies and getting killed, and it's all over. But in this one, they succeeded, and apparently Katie and Christy were brought to the current time where they live out their lives with this family. It has young girls, which would then mean time was completely altered. Now that creates the paradox. Unless, oh, well, you've created an alternate timeline where these versions of Katie and Christy live on and all that and don't get possessed and stuff like that. I don't know. Whereas the adult versions, well, they were doomed. But I mean, it doesn't really specify where's Katie. She was never killed off in any of the movies. And you would have to assume that she had a hand in this house being sold to this particular family and that sort of thing. You really needed her in the movie if this was going to be, the final one and to complete your narrative. But they didn't do it. So, but anyway, the official ending is the horrific one, and it's a horror movie, so the idea that it would get a happy ending. They don't tend to do that with horror movies much anymore. Certainly not since the 70s, you know. So anyway, I wasn't all that crazy about it. And I think they were just throwing things up against the wall and then trying to pad it out later, or some form of fashion of that approach. And it's just too bad. It had something interesting, but you got to maintain your narrative, and you've got to figure out how to craft that in there. So, that was just too bad. But anyway, it was touted as the final one and all that, so okay, you wrapped it up. Well, down the road, they decided, let's do another one. And so, for the purposes of Paramount Plus, which I commonly refer to as PP because of what they did to Star Trek, they did another Paranormal Activity, this one completely removed from the storyline of the previous ones. Or is it? Well, it involves some totally different characters and whatnot. And goes to what appears to be an Amish farm or what have you, but appearances are deceiving and all that. So Paranormal Activity, next of kin, and this girl trying to track down her birth mother and all this sort of stuff. And, it's got the usual things of found footage stuff, and this isn't too bad and that, but then it just falls apart, and even to the point that they just abandon the found footage template altogether, which you just can't do that. It's stupid. So, I mean, that goes all the way back to the last broadcast, which did that, which was pretty good film until how it ends. And it's like, no, you didn't have to do it like that. You could have still revealed the killer at the end and left it at that. But whatever. And here, it's much worse. I mean, I guess the demon had a camera and started filming the movie. I don't know, but it was terrible. I'll link it at the end of the video if you want to go see my review on that. But that's it for Paranormal Activity. Who knows? And they're easily cheap to make, so they might do another one. But their best bet would just be some standalone story. Maybe something completely different. But anyway, it had some moments. Some films I think are pretty good, but overall, as an overall franchise narrative, what have you, I think it fizzled. So that's too bad.